The grim reality of trench warfare during the First World War pushed human ingenuity to its darkest limits, transforming the battlefield into a slaughterhouse where international law was frequently ignored. Desperate to break the bloody stalemate, commanders and common soldiers alike deployed terrifying new armaments that caused unimaginable suffering and shattered the established conventions of civilized combat. Today, we are diving into the gritty details of the most brutal battlefield innovations to examine 9 trench weapons that violated the rules of war. The Winchester Model 1897 trench shotgun became so devastatingly effective at clearing out enemy dugouts that the German government issued a diplomatic protest in September 1918, claiming it violated the laws of war. Featuring a slam-fire mechanism that allowed a soldier to hold down the trigger and pump the handle to rapidly discharge 6 shells of double-aught buckshot, it instantly swept a narrow trench line with a massive spread of lead. The German High Command argued that this weapon caused unnecessary suffering and explicitly violated Article 23 of the Hague Convention, threatening to execute any captured soldier found carrying one. In response, the United States rejected the claim, pointing out the hypocrisy of the protest given the enemy's use of poison gas, and threatened harsh reprisals. Ultimately, the political standoff highlighted how the sheer brutality of the pump-action shotgun forced even hardened empires to plead for legal intervention. Originally designed for pioneer units to cut through wood and clear brush for fortifications, the Sawback Bayonet quickly became a powerful symbol of alleged barbarism on the Western Front. Allied propaganda painted this serrated blade as a malicious weapon designed specifically to catch on clothing and rip out the intestines of opponents upon withdrawal, arguing it was a direct violation of the Hague Convention's rules against superfluous injury. The reality was that it was a standard tool, but the psychological terror it inspired was so profound that Allied soldiers would routinely torture or execute any captured German found carrying one, fearing for the lives of their own men who were being slaughtered upon surrender. German commanders eventually ordered the saw teeth to be ground down or the weapons withdrawn entirely. This grim episode proved that the mere perception of a war crime could be just as deadly as the physical weapon itself. The catastrophic release of chlorine gas by the German army at the Second Battle of Ypres in April 1915 forever changed modern warfare and blatantly violated the 1899 Hague Declaration. That specific international treaty explicitly prohibited the use of projectiles designed with the sole objective of diffusing asphyxiating or deleterious gases. Instead of firing artillery shells, the German forces exploited a perceived legal loophole by releasing the heavy greenish-yellow cloud directly from thousands of commercial cylinders, allowing the wind to slowly carry the suffocating death into the unprepared Allied trenches. The harsh chemical violently burned the eyes and respiratory tracts of the defending soldiers, causing them to literally drown in their own bodily fluids as they desperately scrambled for high ground. This devastating breach of international law opened Pandora's box, initiating a deadly, uncontrolled arms race of chemical weapons that would claim hundreds of thousands of casualties by the war's end. Despite being explicitly outlawed by the Hague Convention of 1899 due to the horrific, untreatable wounds they inflicted, expanding bullets found their way into the muddy, blood-soaked trenches of the Western Front. Standard, full-metal jacket rifle rounds were required because they were designed to pass cleanly through a human body, offering a wounded soldier a reasonable chance for medical recovery. However, soldiers desperate for guaranteed stopping power during frantic trench raids frequently modified their ammunition in the field. By filing down the tips of their standard-issue cartridges, cutting crosses into the lead, or reversing the bullets in their casings, Infantrymen created makeshift projectiles that would flatten and mushroom upon impact, tearing massive exit wounds and shattering bone. Both the Allied and Central Powers relentlessly accused each other of deploying these illegal munitions, and any sniper or infantryman captured with altered bullets faced immediate execution by firing squad. When the German army first deployed the Flamethrower against the British at Hague in 1915, it introduced a level of primal terror that many argued violated the fundamental spirit of civilized combat, and the prohibition against causing unnecessary suffering. Operating this monstrous device involved strapping a pressurized tank of highly flammable oil to a soldier's back and projecting a roaring stream of liquid fire directly into the inescapable spaces of enemy defensive lines. The weapon did not just burn men alive, it rapidly consumed the very oxygen in the air, suffocating those hiding deep within subterranean dugouts and collapsing the structural integrity of the trench walls. Although not explicitly named in pre-war treaties due to its novel nature, the flamethrower was universally condemned by the Allies as a barbaric terror weapon. Despite their loud moral objections, the brutal effectiveness of the weapon led the Allies to immediately deploy their own fiery counterparts. Close-quarters combat in the trenches devolved into a brutal medieval struggle for survival, leading to the creation of specialized melee weapons like the infamous United States Mark I trench knife that deliberately ignored the rules of war. While standard combat knives were accepted military tools, these specialized daggers featured a distinctive three-sided stiletto blade designed specifically to inflict deep, gaping puncture wounds that were nearly impossible for field medics to stitch closed. Combined with a heavy cast bronze knuckle duster grip intended for shattering skulls in the cramped darkness of a midnight raid, the weapon was explicitly engineered to maximize lethality and ensure fatal blood loss. The triangular blade directly violated the Hague Convention's prohibition against arms calculated to cause superfluous injury, representing a grim abandonment of military honor. In the terrifying confines of the trench, soldiers traded the lofty ideals of civilized warfare for ruthless, cold-blooded efficiency in hand-to-hand slaughter. As the global conflict dragged on, the violation of chemical warfare treaties escalated to horrific new heights with the introduction of mustard gas, a blistering agent that bypassed the limited protection of standard gas masks. Unlike earlier asphyxiants that dissipated quickly, this oily, yellow-brown substance lingered in the mud, water, and deep craters of the battlefield for weeks, remaining a deadly hazard long after the initial artillery barrage had ceased. The chemical attacked exposed skin through uniforms, causing massive, fluid-filled blisters, temporary or permanent blindness, and severe internal hemorrhaging if the toxic vapors were inhaled. Because there was no effective treatment, exposure ensured a slow, excruciating demise that completely overwhelmed the medical capabilities of both sides. By utilizing a weapon that indiscriminately maimed soldiers and contaminated the very earth they fought upon, military commanders demonstrated a complete disregard for the laws of war, prioritizing psychological devastation over any remaining semblance of battlefield morality. Originally developed by the British as a specialized anti-aircraft munition to ignite the highly flammable hydrogen gas of attacking German Zeppelins, incendiary and explosive rifle bullets were soon turned against human targets in a blatant war crime. The St. Petersburg Declaration of 1868 had strictly forbidden the use of explosive projectiles weighing less than 400 grams against enemy personnel, aiming to prevent the agonizing, mutilating injuries such small munitions would inevitably cause. However, in the desperate close-range chaos of trench raids and tense sniper duels, soldiers occasionally loaded these Buckingham or explosive rounds into their standard infantry rifles to inflict maximum damage on their adversaries. Upon striking a human body, they detonated or burned fiercely inside the flesh, causing catastrophic internal trauma that was impossible to survive. The discovery of these rounds in captured magazines led to an unspoken understanding that anyone caught using them would be shown no mercy. In a devious and calculated circumvention of wartime humanitarian agreements, military scientists developed chloropicrin, a potent vomiting agent designed specifically to defeat the life-saving gas masks that had become standard issue for every soldier. Because early respirators utilized simple charcoal filters that could not effectively trap this particular chemical compound, the irritating gas would easily penetrate the mask, inducing uncontrollable coughing, severe nausea, and violent vomiting in the trenches. Unable to breathe and choking on their own sickness, panicked soldiers were forced to rip off their protective masks to clear their airways, directly exposing themselves to the lethal payloads of phosgene or chlorine gas that were fired simultaneously in the artillery barrage. This insidious tactic of using a non-lethal chemical to force soldiers into a lethal exposure was widely condemned as a treacherous violation of the rules of war. It showcased the dark, uncompromising brilliance of military strategy, where victory was prioritized over human life. Which of these devastating battlefield innovations do you believe was the absolute most terrifying to face in combat? Leave your answer in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more military history.